Alright, what's happening, guys? Throwback again. Here to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing a video review for one of my favorite zombie movies of all time. It is number 3 out of my top 10 or top 5 favorite zombie movies of all time. And that is of 28 Days Later. Okay, so with the recent release of World War Z, a lot of comparisons being made from World War Z to 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, in that it seems to fit inside almost the same zombie apocalypse type universe. The infected seem to be able to sprint really fast, come at you, the spasming of the zombies, the ideas that are introduced later on in 28 Weeks Later that certain people, depending on their genetics, may be immune to walkers, or I guess zombies or runners, as I like to call them in this, because they don't really walk, they run most of the time, which is quite freaky. So as a result of that movie coming out, decided I would go ahead and review 28 Days Later, as it is one of the greatest zombie movies ever made. It is a British movie starring Cillian Murphy, and it takes place in Great Britain, and basically it has almost the same start to The Walking Dead. Now, I've heard this talked about before, that maybe one was a ripoff of the other, but it seems more along the lines of just that they both were being written at pretty much the same time, being released at pretty much the same time, and it was just a coincidence that both start with a character being in a hospital or in a coma and awaking from it. Now, it's not exactly the same because, of course, you have Rick Grimes, who is a police officer, and Cillian Murphy's character, Jim, who was a bicycle courier. So that's not even close to the same thing. This was, for me, the first time I saw Cillian Murphy in anything, I think. This first performance I've ever seen. And I think he's fantastic in this role and in this movie. I think he's really, really great in 28 Days Later. Now, this one is one of the scarier zombie movies you can watch, if not the most frightening, I would have to say. Probably the most frightening. The angles, the camera, the zombies themselves, just the rapid pace, it's very frightening. Now, in terms of spoilers with this one, I mean, this movie has been out for a really long time, so if you haven't seen it by now, probably if you have a couple hours, I would say go watch it if you like zombie movies, because it is definitely one of the best. There are a lot of things about this movie that set it apart from any other type of zombie apocalypse movie. First of all, it's shot in Great Britain, and the environment is beautiful. I think, is it London, or where is it that they shot? I believe it is. It's London. And somehow they were able to make it seem as if nobody was there, like the whole place was a ghost town. And it has some of the most beautiful shots of any, like even compared to The Walking Dead, for example, where you have Atlanta, the cityscape. Very similar to that, but I might have to say even better. Now, of course, it's a movie scale, so it shouldn't be, the movie scale should be higher than a TV series, because the budget's like 10 times that, like a huge budget, right? But yeah, the cityscape shots are beautiful. The way it really sets the environment, sets the tone. The idea of him first kind of discovering what's happening to people becoming zombies, or the infected, as they call them in this, which I like that too, the infected. It's more of an idea of like a contagious virus than just saying zombies infected. He meets a priest or a pastor at a church, and he's infected, and he's going into spasms, and just the way they do it in 28 Days Later is like, oh my God, it's so scary, it's so freaky. Plus, to add to that, the infected are really quick, and of course, you're in London, so this is like, I mean, there's so many people all over the place. It would be so hard to survive because it's so dense. It'd be like being in New York in a zombie apocalypse. It would just be awful. It'd be like, how are we going to get the hell out of here? So it's cool stuff. Now, some of the other things I like a lot about this one versus a lot of other zombie movies, the first one I have to say is it actually gives us an illustration of how this type of virus may have come to be, which is something that no other zombie movie or TV series or comic book or anything has tried to do. And it does it in a way that I think is genuine to the situation. Meaning, at the beginning of this movie, you have scientists at, I forget what school it is or university or whatever, and they are working on creating this rage virus, and it starts from monkeys or chimpanzees. Yeah, and basically, I really like the intro where they're like they're using conditioning to create this this rage virus, and it ends up basically the chimps get it because they're subject to so much hatred, and the scientists are working on it. They're doing these things, and then they end up turning on the scientists and biting them, and they become infected. And it's a really great like scene of where it's like, okay, this is how a zombie apocalypse would start. Like this, like if you ever had a question in other series or things like that, how could this thing have started? This is a really good like explanation scene on how something like that could begin, and that it actually probably would be created by humans in a lab somewhere and just become contagious and get out of control. Because once something like that gets started, it would be so hard to try to contain that and stop that. So that's definitely a takeaway. That's something that even if you don't watch the entire movie, I think everybody who likes zombie apocalypse movies or shows or anything should definitely see that scene at the beginning of the movie where they show the chimps and the rage virus, they call it rage, leading to the infected and into what we think of as fast zombies, just getting started. So that's a really cool takeaway from this movie. Also, this was the first one that really psychologically analyzes a zombie apocalypse, and it starts to show what people would become in a zombie apocalypse better than any other movie before it, and similar to The Walking Dead. I think The Walking Dead has taken a lot after this. I think Kirkman's probably taken a lot of what happened in that, and great minds think alike, so they both kind of were doing their own thing. Who inspired who? Well, the movie, I think, the book was out, but a lot of the parts in the book later on, like what we become and stuff like that in the comics and in the TV series, that wasn't out by the time they were doing this. So this was like the first one to really analyze human beings and say, okay, how would they behave in a zombie apocalypse? You would have military soldiers, you'd have a leader of some capacity there. But would he be a good guy? If he invited others in and provided them with sanctity, would he necessarily be a good guy? Or would he be, sort of like Negan in The Walking Dead, a womanizer that, kills off men that come to him for sanctity, or executes them basically, and then keeps the women to be able to, and that's an interesting part of this. Also, another thing that happens too with Cillian Murphy's character Jim is that he loses his humanity in the process too, and he becomes like the infected. When later on in the movie, when you see him have to fight for his life against certain characters, he is sort of like Rick in the part where Rick in The Walking Dead, What We Become, bites that dude on the neck. Like, it's totally lost his humanity. Bites him on the neck and rips it. Kind of something similar to that in this one. I don't want to give it away, but you guys remember exactly what I'm talking about. Brutal scene, but makes sense in this type of world that he would become like that he would transform and evolve into that. And Jim is probably one of the more prominent survivors. Jim and is it Serena? I think it's Selena. Jim and Selena, I would have to say, are two of the more prominent characters in any zombie apocalypse movie as well, especially Cillian Murphy's Jim, I think. Just because of how he evolves over time in the movie, how he changes, and how the world forces him to change into this monster when he has to be, and do things just like the infected. And it's sort of like What We Become. It's a really good depiction of how people would change under those types of circumstances. So that in and of itself, I think, really is a treasure of the movie, and it really feels like, okay, now we're in a zombie apocalypse, but where do we go from there? The writing in this is fantastic to go to that point, to be able to analyze the human condition and see how it evolves and changes and what a person would become like. Even though they were a bicycle courier at the beginning, probably a good person, probably, help his neighbor, I don't know, carry in a mattress or something if he saw them, or would help an old lady across the street, this type of thing, into this monster that would have to do certain things to survive. Not that he's a bad guy or a villain, but to defend his little group will do pretty much almost anything. So I think that's interesting too. Also, another idea which is brought forward in this one, because of course Great Britain and is an island, is that infection probably couldn't cross water, or at least they don't seem to think it would be able to if they sealed it off. And that the characters in this one believe they are inside a quarantine, which is, I think that's another interesting concept too, that the government of other places and things like that, the UN and all that, would just turn on them and just seal it off, because they wouldn't want the virus to spread, because it's so contagious and spreads so rapidly. Yeah, so all in all, I mean, you've got great character development throughout the movie. You've got some excellent scenes that are shot extremely well and creatively. You've got some beautiful landscapes, the quarantine, the environment is just gorgeous. And all in all, I think you have the most frightening zombie movie ever created. Thrilling and just extremely well done. Goes on past its time. It's something that you can watch nowadays and still appreciate very much. And not every movie can you do that. Not every movie can you go back and watch and it'll still be, you know, that good. But this one is that good. This is the type of movie you could watch in 20 or 30 years. This will be one that people remember when it comes to zombie apocalypses as a really, really freaky one. The sequel, 28 Weeks Later, I don't necessarily know if I'm going to review that. Depends how much people like this review, on whether or not I will, and whether or not you guys are interested to see me review that. Please write in the comments below, and I will consider it. In terms of score for 28 Days Later, how can I rate it? It's got to be high. Higher than World War Z? Yeah, it has to be. I would say, okay, let's see, probably a 9 out of 10. For what it is, maybe a 9.5 because it's so scary and that's the genre it's in. Okay, for its time, yeah, okay, so I would have to give it, I guess I'll give it a 9, okay, that's how good it is. It really is that good. Better than World War Z? Yeah, I think so. I think it's a lot better than World War Z. It's something you got to see if you've never seen it, absolutely. In terms of 28 Weeks Later, it didn't really recapture that same feeling that 28 Days Later had. So if you guys are interested to see me review that, please write in the comments below and I'll consider it. Some other zombie movies that I want to review eventually. My favorite, Day of the Dead, got to review that eventually. The original Dawn of the Dead, old school one, that one I got to review eventually. And Shaun of the Dead, got to do that too. That's a good one. Got to do that one eventually. So now when The Walking Dead's not on TV, nothing like that, I've got some extra time. So I may consider doing other reviews. But it all depends, because a lot of times when it comes to older media and older stuff, people aren't really interested a lot of times. So I may or may not do any more. But this one was one I felt like, you know, I got to review 28 Days Later, because that one is really special. Really special. And it influenced, I think it influenced The Walking Dead, although I can't prove it. I think it did. I think it influenced World War Z, especially 28 Weeks Later. Would have for sure, the movie, definitely. And it has changed the genre. You know, it really has changed the genre. So, great movie, awesome. Definitely check it out. If you have not seen it, you gotta check it out. If you like The Walking Dead, you have to check it out. And I'll call it here. That's it for this video, guys. I'll see you for the next one. This is Trev, and I'm saying peace.